Which deep dynasty stashes should you keep an eye on in week 18? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can check her out on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. You can also follow her work at Behind the Steel Curtain, Pro Football Focus, Yahoo. Any other places I'm missing, Kate?
No, I think that about covers it for now. And of course, Locked On Dynasty, where we're slinging it. Dynasty advice every single day for you, our favorite listeners, our everydayers.
Perfect.
Never miss a beat.
So we're going into week 18. Most fantasy football leagues have wrapped up. Please tell me your fantasy football leagues have wrapped up, because this week is an absolute mess. Several teams benching starters or limiting starters, as several teams just outright tanking, as we're going to see some injury reports later today. But Kate, you and I have put together a list of some players that we are keeping an eye on in your deep dynasty leagues that are expected to get a lot of playing time. And let's start with the Baltimore Ravens, who, if you played like 50% of the snaps this year, you're just not playing against the Steelers. But you and I are both keeping an eye on Rashod Bateman. Why should we watch Bateman this week?
Yes. I mean, Marcus, let's talk about Rashod Bateman just as a whole, right? Like, still 24 years old. He's in his third NFL season, former first round pick for the Ravens. But obviously, things never panned out due to injury. He had a groin injury in his rookie season, then had the Liz Frank, ended his sophomore season. And I do think in the second half of this season, we finally started to see a Rashod Bateman that looks a little bit healthier than he has in years past. He started to get a little bit more involved in the second half of the season, a few more targets. Finally, just last week in a crucial game against the Dolphins, 6 targets, 4 receptions, 54 receiving yards. But what I do think is particularly interesting about the circumstance with Rashod Bateman, he's finally looking healthy, and he might just have a whole window of opportunity here in the future with wide receiver Rashod Bateman, or wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. playing in the final year of his contract with the Baltimore Ravens. He signed just a 1-year deal. Like, this could be, if Rashod Bateman is healthy, an opportunity for him to kind of reclaim that wide receiver 2 role and play an integral part in this offense alongside Zay Flowers.
I agree. There's been times this year where he's looked really healthy. There's been other games where he's dropped some really key passes. Let's not mention the first Steeler game where he dropped an easy touchdown in the end zone.
Drops, just to be clear, drops were an issue for him in the draft process. So nothing particularly new there. You would have liked him to see him clear those up by this point, but still not like breaking news.
I do think this is a really important game for him, because he is going to play, I would say, a decent chunk of snaps. They probably will limit him a little bit because they're going to need him for the playoffs. But this is a time with Zay Flowers out, with Odell Beckham out, with obviously Mark Andrews out, to go establish yourself as a weapon and somebody that the Ravens can lean on going forward. Obviously, he's still under contract for the 2024 season. They've got to make a decision on his 5th-year option this offseason. I think you and I both have a feeling where that's going. But I think with a big game here and then a nice postseason, I think people might start to get back on the bandwagon going into the summer. So that's a good one to keep an eye on. I also just want to mention briefly, Kate, the quarterback that's going to be throwing to Rashod Bateman. Tyler Huntley's getting the start, his first of the year. He is a free agent after this season. Now, I anticipate him probably coming back, but we've seen in the past, like, there's been quarterbacks that have had big performances at the end of the season, this final game, that go on to get fairly decent sized contracts from other teams, whether it's Matt Flynn. I mean, that one didn't really work out for Seattle, but Scott Mitchell when the Lions did it. So I'm just keeping an eye on Tyler Huntley. If he plays really well and it's 300 total yards and 3 touchdowns and he beats the Steelers with the JV squad, maybe you will see other teams start to poke around this offseason.
And Marcus, on the flip side of that, maybe we talk about Mason Rudolph in the same vein.
Please.
Obviously, he's had a longer tenure here. He's not just a Week 18 wonder, but he's looked really competent in the past couple of games here. And like for fantasy in particular, he has been a passable fantasy quarterback. I can't believe I'm actually saying it, but he's actually been kind of a viable asset here in both of his 2 starts. Even without passing a single touchdown here in week 17, still posted over just under 12 fantasy points, which again, you don't love 12 fantasy points, but to see the yardage and the offensive production with Mason Rudolph under center, I just think also probably worth a look here on the other side of the ball. This will just be, I think, a really interesting game for both of these teams, but definitely for the Ravens in particular.
I'll even give you one super, super deep guy to watch, Charlie Kolar, the tight end who they drafted actually ahead of Isaiah Likely in the 2022 class. He caught a touchdown last week against Miami. Coming out of Iowa State, he was not really considered a blocker, one of these kind of flex tight ends that you want to play in the slot. I mean, he's obviously blocked by Mark Andrews and now Isaiah Likely, but he is somebody that we thought highly of going into the draft. So if you're in these super deep tight end premium leagues, just keep an eye on him. He's probably going to play most of the snaps on Saturday. Just another deep dynasty stash if you are in these super, super deep dynasty leagues. Okay, this isn't the only AFC North game that we want to talk about, because the Browns-Bengals game this week means absolutely nothing for either side. The Browns have already clinched the number 5 seed. The Bengals already are eliminated from playoff contention. But that doesn't mean there aren't players to watch in that game. We will discuss them next. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. At the start of the new year, every small business owner is asking themselves the same question: what's the one move I can make that'll take my business to the next level in 2024? LinkedIn Jobs knows that your success all depends on the team that you surround yourself with. That's why LinkedIn Jobs has created the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have this many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number 1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats, it might not have the time or the resources to hire. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, that process is so quick and easy. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7. Covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, Kate, let's dive into Browns-Bengals. Who are you keeping an eye on in this game?
Gotta go back to my guy, Cedric Tillman, who I loved in the draft. 3rd round pick for the Browns. Obviously not the main guy as long as Amari Cooper is in town, but this could be an opportunity, I think, for him to play himself into a little bit more playing time. And Marcus, 6'3", 215 pounds, didn't play out his final season there at Tennessee. Had an ankle injury that ended his year after just 6 games. And that paved the way for Jalen Hyatt to have his breakout season. I do not think Jalen Hyatt wins the Biletnikoff if it isn't for Cedric Tillman's injury. I think we could have been looking at a very different situation, but
100% agree.
despite that huge size, can play on the outside. He is a contested catch aficionado, good stop ability for that size. And, he had a relatively late breakout, but I do think that like his general skill set, not a huge yards after the catch guy, but just like can be one of these guys that you throw it up to and you pray for the best. And Cedric Tillman could be this monster guy that could be a huge asset with big playability. Now, like I said, not a huge yards after the catch yet, but among 200 qualifying wide receivers in his final season with 50 plus catches, did lead the pack in passer rating when targeted. Like, again, he could be one of these guys that just makes big plays. And we finally started to see this whole offense wake up a little bit, especially in the passing game. So I just want to see what can we get out of Cedric Tillman, because that final season at Tennessee is always going to be a big question mark for me. In 6 games, 37 catches, 417 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns, just like I think was on pace to have a really solid year. And I'm disappointed we didn't get to see him play it out.
100% agree. There's so many different angles we can take here. Also, like looking ahead to 2024, I believe Elijah Moore will be going on the final year of his contract. Amari Cooper will be going into year 10. And Amari Cooper is somebody who has dealt with some injuries in the past, dealing with a heel injury now. Obviously, I think he's going to be back and he's going to play in 2024. But beyond that, it's anybody's guess as to what Amari is going to do. So I also think there's just a role in this offense for one of these big physical receivers that can make plays down the field, that can make plays after the catch. It's going to be a little bit harder this week with Jeff Driscoll throwing him the ball. But I do think he's going to get a lot of opportunities because Cooper's going to be out. Elijah Moore out with a concussion. He's just going to be the de facto number 1 receiver. David Njoku probably not going to play a lot in this game, if at all. I want to see how he looks as the X receiver when the offense is running through him. He has all the makings of a, productive outside receiver. And we should also mention, like, the Browns have had no draft capital over the last 2 years because of the Deshaun Watson trade. Their first pick in 2023, Cedric Tillman. It's pretty clear they love him. I think this is a great call. I cannot wait to watch him on Sunday.
Yeah, he's going to be, I think, in for a prime role that kind of allows you to see, okay, what has he learned, kind of playing behind some of the other starters in that offense so far. But also, man, if you're Jeff Driscoll, I think you could do a lot worse than Cedric Tillman being your go-to guy if you're going to throw him some yellow balls.
And we've seen in this offense, like even Donovan Peoples-Jones, who I think was a lesser prospect than Cedric Tillman, be a productive receiver. And now I think this offense is just in a much better place than it was 2 years ago. And obviously, I think when Deshaun Watson comes back, it's still going to be good. But I think they can support multiple receivers and a tight end. So I'm buying Cedric Tillman long-term. I bet in your dynasty leagues, there's probably some where he's been dropped just because the production this year hasn't really been there. Go out and grab Cedric Tillman because I think the hype train is going to really start going after this week. I want to go to the other side of the ball, Chase Brown. Now, Brown has been somebody over the last month who has really started to pick up some steam. I think he's like this year or last year's version of Jaylen Warren, like somebody who, whenever they touch the ball, was really dynamic. I think in 2024, he could have a monster season.
I think that is the case, Marcus. Coming out of Illinois, you looked at Chase Brown. He only had 5th round draft capital, not much, but back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons. He's been, pretty efficient. He's shown the ability, like throughout Illinois, saw a growth in his role as a receiver each season. He's one of these elusive guys. He's got, I think, a lot of power. Had that sort of, workhorse role with Illinois, took on a ton of work, had 329 carries in his final season, but also has speed. And that is what makes him such an interesting guy, because we saw him be able to handle volume. And I do think, Marcus, that like breakaway speed is absolutely telling. He's a great athlete. Nice big hands, ran a 4.43, 40-yard vert or 40-inch vert, 10-foot 7-inch broad jump. Just he's a really, really solid athlete. And I think between I think the power that he runs with, like, he's a really dynamic guy that I love that the Bengals got here in the 5th round. I thought it was a great value. But Marcus, like, we're talking about a team that has obviously leaned really heavy on Joe Mixon. We've started to see them get Chase Brown more involved. And I do think a part of that has been sort of this curiosity. What do they have behind Joe Mixon? You have Joe Mixon next year has just $2.75 million dead cap on his contract. Like, it is feasible that they could move on from Joe Mixon. They would save just under $6 million. They are in a position where they need to save money. Obviously, they gave Joe Burrow his extension. They need to get Jamar Chase his extension. Do they find a way where they try to finagle some sort of way for T. Higgins? Like, they need money. And if they look at Chase Brown and he can post a solid game, which, let's be clear, when he's touched the ball, he's looked fantastic this year. And I do think that, like, I don't know, I could foresee a point where he could be given a shot to lead this backfield in the future.
He's just good. And one of the issues that this Bengals offense has had, not only this year, but over the last 2 years, is they just lack a lot of speed. I mean, like, Jamar Chase is fast, but he's not really a burner. T. Higgins, not super quick or fast. Tyler Boyd, obviously not. Joe Mixon wasn't fast coming out of school in 2017. They just haven't had a lot of juice in this offense. And that's why whenever you see Chase Brown touch the ball, it looks so dynamic. And I just wonder, when Zach Taylor looks at this team kind of going forward, are they better off having Joe Mixon maybe in a complementary role where he comes in short yardage and he does some pass blocking stuff, and it's Chase Brown who's getting 14 to 15 touches every single week? Because I kind of think that might be the case. I think this is a big opportunity for him. They're not going to obviously want to run Joe Mixon into the ground in a meaningless Week 18 game.
Yeah.
My bet here, Kate, is that Joe Mixon comes back next year on a reduced number, but it's Chase Brown that's getting the more touches. I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see Chase Brown just have a monster game against the Browns in Week 18.
And I mean, Marcus, like, you look at, some of Joe Mixon's, like, quote unquote struggles, right? Like, he's not been a super efficient running back, like, period. Averaging just 3.8 yards per carry this year. Efficiency has never really been his strong point outside of 2018, averaged 4.9 yards a carry, but generally speaking, not been a super efficient option. And I do think that, this is one of those elements that Chase Brown might be able to bring to the offense, is a little bit of efficiency due to his quickness, due to his burst. Again, just a kind of a different runner, but also dynamic in the way that I do think he can be a bit of a grinder too. Like, you don't have to pigeonhole him into one role. And I do think that, again, circumstance could have him set for maybe flex-worthy contention moving forward based on the talent.
Absolutely. Let's go to a different game in the NFC. Rams 49ers. Everybody is sitting in this game, but that doesn't mean there aren't players to watch. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Around New Year's, we get obsessed with how to change ourselves instead of just expanding on what we're already doing right. Maybe you finally organized that one part of your space and you want to tackle another. Or maybe you're taking your supplements every morning and now you want to actually eat breakfast too. Therapy helps you find your strengths so you can ditch the extreme resolutions and make changes that will actually stick. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's done entirely online. It's designed to be convenient and flexible and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for any reason at no additional charge. Celebrate the progress that you've already made. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Everydayers, Kate and I will be back on Monday to break down all of the action from Week 18 and all the Dynasty relevant information that we see on Saturday and Sunday. So make sure you tune in for that. But there's two last players that I just want to mention here before we head out, and that's Sam Darnold and Carson Wentz. Now, these are
What year is it, Marcus?
Yeah, I know.
What year is it?
2024, believe it or not. Two former what did Sam Darnold go 2 or 3? I think he went 3, right? We have the former number 2 pick, a former number 3 pick. And the reason I'm watching these guys is we know that they're both very talented. Carson Wentz was a former MVP candidate. Was it that back in 2017? Sam Darnold had some nice moments for the Jets. But the reason I'm
You're
watching,
right, by the way, third overall pick.
Yeah. These are two of the best offenses in the league with two of the best play callers in the league, and Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. And I just want to see how they look with extended reps in these offenses because, like for the Rams, for example, Matt Stafford, not the most durable quarterback ever. He's also getting up there in age. Now, if Matt Stafford retires, I don't expect the Rams to go to Carson Wentz, but it's just something to monitor. For the 49ers, I do think if something were to happen to Brock Purdy, I do think Sam Darnold would be the long-term starter there. So I want to monitor these two guys because I think if they were starters in their respective systems for an extended period of time, I wouldn't be surprised if they were top 10, top 12 fantasy quarterbacks.
That's sure bold. I'm not as excited to watch the backups, but Marcus, like, maybe we can take our tight end philosophy, grab as many mid-tier tight ends as possible and stash them on your bench for some of these deep leagues, super flex leagues. These players probably are available on your waiver wire. So,
they're definitely available.
So maybe this is that opportunity for you guys to go in, snag a backup, and this is kind of their audition to earn one of those roles and actually find a long-term home. And maybe this is what seals the deal for him.
There's also my concern is that because the Rams and the 49ers are both in the playoffs already and they're resting starters, and there's a pretty decent chance that they end up playing each other like in round 2, like if the Rams were to win their game because they're going to be the 6th or the 7th seed, that maybe both sides just aren't going to show a lot. Like it's going to be the most vanilla game.
This could be a very limited offense on both fronts, like you said, just from a scouting perspective, not giving away some of your playbook. Obviously, they've played out the entire year, but this is an opportunity for them to maybe hold some more cards close to the chest in preparation for that matchup. So I think you're right. They're probably not going to give 100% to one another in this matchup, which maybe that means the quality of our evaluation for these quarterbacks not quite as high. But I think the thing you want to see is, do they look capable of running an NFL? Yeah. Do they look competent running an NFL offense again? And that is probably the biggest thing you should watch rather than the specifics.
Exactly. I just want to see which of these quarterbacks looks competent and which of them could potentially be, somebody who moves on and gets a job next year. Listen, I don't see either of these guys like walking into a franchise and being the day one starter, but I could see like Sam Darnold being the part of a quarterback competition, maybe in Pittsburgh, where hey, this is a guy that has a lot of talent. He's like still 26, 27 years old. Let's just see how he looks in our system. So just something that I'm keeping an eye on, Kate. A lot of interesting football games this week between games that mean absolutely nothing, and games that mean absolutely everything, like Texans, Colts, Bills, Dolphins, Steelers games obviously means a lot. Cowboys, Washington. So make sure that you come back here on Monday. We'll break down all of the relevant winners and losers from a wild Week 18. Go check out the show on YouTube. We post videos every single day over there. Go follow the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Maju. Check her out at Pro Football Focus, Behind the Steel Curtain, Yahoo. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we will see you right back here on Monday, everybody.